when we first started our podcast, we had to get like probably 3 or 4 different websites and services going at once to record it, to edit it, to host it, and then have it approved through iTunes. And now we use Anchor by Spotify, where it's just a one-stop shop where you can record, edit your podcast, and when you distribute it, it'll go to all the platforms. So it's just everything right in one place. And the best thing is it's totally free. So if you want to get started, if you're on the fence about starting a podcast, or if you have a podcast and you want to make it simpler, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, where we bring the mind, body, and gym together so you can improve your health, increase performance, and live your best life. For more information, visit thinkfitnesslife.com. Here are your hosts, Matt Gluckman and Eric Menchie.
All right, welcome back to the Think Fitness Life podcast, Mindset, Exercise, and Nutrition with your hosts, Matt Gluckman, and across the land, Eric Menchie. So today, our topic is going to be talking about when trainers, coaches, or individuals aren't pushing themselves hard enough, and how you can better orchestrate your workout and your program design so that you innately are always pushing the envelope so that you can get the adaptations and get the returns from the time invested in the gym. Where would you like to start us off, Eric?
Big topic. We've all seen or been on Instagram or social media and see workouts, right? We see people posting things. We see people advertising, all good things. But I think a lot of times people fail to describe when it comes to training or working out is the intensity that we go about it. And you could write down on a piece of paper a workout. Someone can interpret that, and someone could take that workout and do it in 2 hours, where that workout should be done in 45 minutes. Now that makes a big difference, huge difference of timing, effort put in, and intensity. So there's this aspect of, and this kind of social media, it hides it. But what I've noticed a lot now is people are not pushing themselves hard enough when it comes to workouts. That these workouts are getting them by or getting what they think they need. And they think they're doing enough, but in reality, they are not. And it kind of it stems from this sort of thought or ideal that we can, if we do minimum, we're going to see those changes. And there's articles out there that will be like, okay, you can do minimum and you'll see changes, but it's not really logistical. You really have to get to a high level of training to do minimal, which is we can define that differently, minimal volume or minimal things, but that person already has that training effect. So when it comes to the general population and the general public, that doesn't work. And people will go in the gym for 30, 40 minutes and think they're getting these beneficial workouts. When in reality, when we talk to them and say, oh, you should be doing double that in that time, or you should be doing more in that time, I think people need to understand their capacity to work and push themselves is greater than they think it is.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to a piece of human biology, or just basic biology in any organism, is anytime they're faced with a challenge, they usually respond by adapting along into a different pathway to almost work around it. And it's in our DNA to use as little energy as possible and consume something that's densely packed with energy, and in essence something like sugar, right, or fruits. And we needed this for survival because we didn't know when our next meal was going to be. And it's why that our brains are extremely efficient, but we need to be able to override that system, which is much harder to do, easier said than done, right? Because that's again back to amygdala processing versus prefrontal cortex processing. Is amygdala processing is going to hold you into a comfort zone. It's going to hold you at a homeostatic level. Well, in order to advance and grow and evolve, you're going to need to outsmart that processing and push yourself so you can expand your comfort zone. And I think that's easier said than done when you're a much more of a seasoned athlete, like you're saying, with someone who can basically do less is more and get a lot of
Correct.
benefits out of the gym because of the constant training they've already done with their body. You know, Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours becoming an expert at something. You got to think that, especially at the professional level, these athletes have well over 10,000 hours of warming their system up, getting ready for a major lift, getting ready for a major match, getting ready for, off-season training, in-season training, and they know how to adjust accordingly. And they keep growing and evolving and getting better at it. But when you're first starting out, this can be pretty tricky because you'll constantly kind of touch the edges, the extremes. You'll be like doing too little, you'll be doing too much. And you'll be balancing and juggling between those two in order to find the balance in the middle, which is just enough. Just enough being enough to create an adaptation, not just enough to make yourself feel like you did something at the gym, but actually get you results that you're trying to get. One other piece I want to mention on this before I pass the mic over is just the way people construct their program and look at exercises. I think they fall into a trap of, well, this is what I did last week, so this is what I need to do this week. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to advance or excel things. The fastest thing to kill an organization is to do what you did yesterday for success. So, Eric, how can people innately push themselves in their workout in a healthy manner?
And that's what it is. How do you do it in a healthy manner? And it's always, you'll hear everyone say it's progressive overload or keep progressing. Now, for most people, they have no idea what that means. Like you mentioned, you come in, we do the same reps, same weight as last week. Even if people keep a book log, I've gone through them where you still see like, hey, yeah, I did this same weight, same sets. Like you said, homeostatic response. The body needs a stress to grow an adaptation. If you give you that stress, the adaptation will occur. The next step is you have to create a greater stress, a greater stimulus for a new adaptation. And that's hard for people to understand because they assume that the same stress is going to give them that same adaptation over time. But it's not the case for the human body because the body adapts and it pushes towards the adaptation, the benefit. It stays there. And the body goes, okay, I have this. You're doing the same thing. Let's go to minimal use of systems and energy that I can to get this work done. Like you said, it's going to figure out the simplest way and the least energetic way to do this. If you don't create that next stress or greater stress, then the adaptation goes away. That's where a lot of people see plateaus in their programs. Their weights fail. They stop losing weight. And you and I both know what's the usually say after 8 weeks, people get great fat loss or weight loss for the beginning. And then all of a sudden it plateaus and it becomes harder and harder to lose weight because that system needs more and more stress to drive that change. If you're a very beginner or in beginner programs, you're going to see a huge adaptation change because your body's not ready for this. But as it starts getting better and your body learns, it's going to cut that adaptation window down and you're not going to see as much. So people get frustrated. Load
Sorry.
comes in. You have to look at the human body as a machine. And this thing needs to be almost killed. And when I mean killed, it's not like you're going to die. But we need to put as much stress on the body that it can handle to cause an adaptation. So when you walk into the gym, you almost want to go in there with the mentality, not that you're going to kill yourself and be lying on the floor dead, is you're going to work your muscles to fatigue to where the muscles think that they're in an environment that they're dying. It's acidic, it's toxic. The muscles are tearing, there's pulling. What's going on? Only the muscle cell knows is it's under attack and distress and there's disruption. So if you train with that notion, like, okay, I have to go in and make sure my muscles know that I'm going to kind of push it towards it, thinks it's going to die, survival. Humans are built for survival. I will create an adaptation. That's where certain programming comes into play. And Matt, you before here, you were mentioning that programming that you're involved in. I think that's probably one of the best things that I've heard that people do, especially for beginners and intermediates, or just in general, to understand how to load without getting crazy into programming and periodization?
So the big thing is you don't want to be wasting too much time being hyper vigilant. And I think that's really easy to do, especially trainers, right? Trainers who are already coaching for other people and now they need to coach for themselves and they think, oh, I can do it all myself better than anyone else. Well, you have a bias in there. You have a bias that you are unaware of, but it's subtle in terms of how much you need to push yourself more, or are you selecting exercises that you just like and maybe not what you need, because you don't have that bird's eye view on your performance, on your own program to see and fill in the gaps. So, a big piece is doing percentage based lifting. I want to mention that first is you should really test into all programs, and each week your primary lift should be percentage based. And it just depends on what your goal is for that period of your program. It might be a couple months that you're going to work in high volume, still heavy, but you're going to be working in higher rep ranges. And then maybe you move on to 3 to 6 months of working in three to 5 rep ranges, and you're doing more sets with a controlled rest period and heavier weights. But again, it's percentage based off of numbers that you've already tested yourself in the first week of the program. But the best thing that I've learned through my coach was the double progression method. I mean, it's so simple that it makes adding weight seamless, and it builds the confidence to let you know that you are ready to add the weight. And the way it works is this: double progression, meaning you advance in 2 main categories. First, you go up in reps, then you go up in weight. So for example, we'll take a standard 3x10. We'll say that it's a dumbbell bench press. Say you do 3x10 one week. Next week, you're going to try to advance reps. And that might be tough. Maybe you only do 11 that first set and you get 10 and maybe even 9 on that third set, right? But eventually you're going to push the envelope until you're getting 12, 12, and 12. So now you just took that 3x10 at your dumbbell press that was the same weight that the next week you went towards 11, 11, 11. And then the following week you worked to 12, 12, 12. And even in that second week, you can work to 12, 12, 12, but sometimes that weight is reaching such a submaximal load that people are just lucky to get a new rep, like one more rep in that next week. And that's the minute growth that you want to look for that's going to lead to bigger advances later on. So again, the next thing from there, once you get to the 3x12 at the dumbbell press, you would go up in weight and you can start back at 10 again. So the idea is you go up in reps first, then you go up in weight, then you go up in reps again, then you go up in weight again, and it keeps cycling like that. So it makes it very seamless, and you don't have to think about it anymore. You just do. And if you execute at a 3x12, next week you better go up in weight, and you can drop your reps back down to 10 again, start the whole series over again. And maybe you're doing something else. Maybe you're starting with a standard 5x5, and you're not a trainer, you're not a coach, you don't have a trainer or a coach. Try the same thing. Try to get 5x6. The first set might be 6, and the next sets might be 5, and you might end with a set of 4. But keep that weight until you can get a 5x6, and then start over again, right? I do like it better for accessory work and that higher rep range type of activity, because I think there is something to be said for just being able to do block periodization with your primary work of just adding 5 pounds week over week and having controlled rest periods. You should be seeing advances in your numbers. You shouldn't be plateauing so easily. But I think this comes to an important topic, just about how we're talking about the spectrum of individuals for pushing themselves, right? Because we already talked about kind of like the intermediate to advanced level client or athlete. They typically know when it's time for them to push themselves, but they might not even be in tune with like the double progression method the way they should. Mm-hmm. But the beginner or the novice, they're seeing so many advances so rapidly that all of a sudden they get to a point where the only thing they're doing is going up 1 extra rep in their set from last week. And they're like, that's not progress. And they lose sight of that appreciation for progress in any shape or form.
Until you perform that 1 rep and you get to the third set of the extra rep and you're like, wait a second. Especially as the weight goes up. On paper, it looks, I'm not going to say easy. It looks different, but then you go up in weight or you try to get that extra rep you're going to feel it depending on what rep scheme you do, what set you do. It doesn't, I don't think it matters what reps, maybe not one or two, but even if you took like a 5, 6, 7 and you worked your way there with the right weight intensity, you're going to feel that rep increase over time. And that's just you pushing more strength endurance and giving yourself more of a stress. And I think it is a great method, and it really teaches people to understand that it's all about increasing. It's not this, oh, I'm going to start 12, then go to 10, I'll add weight, I'll go to 8, and maybe I'll get 4 reps. That's, yeah, that works, but it's not really good because you're not pushing enough. And I think that's...
You're not getting enough consistency on the system to then make that adaptation.
Right.
You're doing too much erratic chaos. Like Menchie talked about creating chaos in the neuromuscular system itself so that you're creating the demand for an adaptation. But when it comes to like your actual overall workout, like zoom out now, and you're just doing so much different things, it's too much chaos and the body can't even take a hold of what it needs to do to advance for the next session. So you've essentially stunted it with chaos, and you've basically put yourself into a place of scarcity, and you're probably you're not going to see results out of things.
And I think that one rep is important, because that one rep, it doesn't seem like much, but that one rep is the extra stimulus from the week prior. That is the extra push that's going to create that adaptation. Right. Then you add weight, that's that stimulus. That is important. And then the other aspect of things is when people don't push themselves hard enough, I don't think they understand how resilient this human body is that we own, that we're living in. I mean, this thing is pretty tough, right? This thing has survived how many years on this planet? Through starvation, through storms, through everything. This system and organism is like one of the most adaptable things on the system. We have people living in different continents, time zones, weather zones, and we figured out how to adapt to it. So a lot of times in this field, I think there's this notion of too much, correct? I know we've heard like rhabdo and CrossFit can get out of control. That's a very small percentage. Like the human body can be very, very pushed to its limits. And I don't think people get close to that when it comes to training. And by all means, I'm not saying you need to go balls to the wall training every day and literally feel like you can't move the next day. Well, that's not beneficial.
To be fair, it just depends what position they're at in their life and what they're trying to achieve. If you're like a high schooler and you're trying to fight for that spot on your varsity football team or sports team or whatever it may be, basketball, volleyball, yeah, you need to get out of your comfort zone consistently.
I guess I should reword that. Maybe not like, I mean, push yourself where you're going to create rhabdo in your system and you're not going to be able to perform the next day. Like,
explain rhabdo to people.
So I think it's rhabdomyolysis. It is when the body actually starts breaking down its own muscle tissue because you've created such a toxic system within your body. Like you've worked it too much where it's saying, hey, I need to stop you because I need to recover you. And we've pushed the limits. And that very, very rarely happens. I mean, we have high-end, elite, tactical performers out there going almost 24 hours a day, beating them into the ground, and they don't get these conditions because we recover correctly and we know how to fuel our system. So the average gym goer is not going to get it by like going to one class, right? If you're a brand new person to working out, don't go 0 to 60 in day one because you might see some very soreness signs, but you're not going to get rhabdo. Now, kind of clearing that, once getting back to your point, I think you're spot on. If you're a person,
but then more to the point though, I was just kind of covering both ends of the spectrum here, and like I think the middle road is where most of our listeners are at, and most people who we work with, which is they want to be able to get benefits from the gym, but they don't want to hurt themselves so that they are going to feel it when they're in that board meeting later today. And it's going to distract them, or they're not going to be able to like play with their kids outside when they get home. And it's like things like that. And I think it's really easy to let that stunt your performance in the gym, which is just going to hold you back from getting further progress. So sorry, I didn't want to like steal the mic from you, but that was my point.
Yeah. And you're totally right with that. There's And I think that's where we're going with this is, yeah, you don't want to be on one far end of the spectrum, but people are, I think they get so afraid of that they stay too far to the other side. They do too much low intense things, less intense. They don't do enough. We need to pull that to the middle of the bell curve and say, okay, this is where you kind of need to be all the time. Yeah, athletes need to understand if you're working hard, that's when you got to go hard. And you do have to go hard in workouts, in the gym, wherever it may be. You need to push the system. I think
It's like when people are saying the common line is like the comfort zone is a nice place to be, but you don't grow there. And you have to know
Yep.
that when you're doing something like spending time going to a gym, you want your time to work for you
Right.
and actually be like an investment into your future, not just spinning your wheels just to check a box for the day. And maybe you are at that point right now and you're just faking it till you make it. Because I think another aspect of this, just the way your goals evolve, the why behind your goals evolve. And then that helps you actually push yourself a little more. Like you're like, okay, I just want to lose a couple pounds. Well, why? Why do you care if you lose a couple pounds? Well, I feel like I don't command the room enough at work, and people just think I'm chubby and a lazy
Yeah.
CEO, or my kids don't respect me enough when I'm trying to give them tips on their sports, and I can't keep up with them on the field, or I'm embarrassed when I take my shirt off in the bedroom. Whatever it may be, you need to know that, and it needs to stay close to your heart, so that when you're in the gym and you're about to do the actual work, you don't let an excuse override you.
Mhm.
You don't let fear override you. You don't let a memory of a past discomfort override you.
But it does. And that is that is problematic. And that is human nature to its max, correct? You have an injury, you have something, it basically tells you, okay, your brain knows it did this, go easy, hold back. And I don't think the medical field, I'm going to kind of go on a bold statement here, and I've seen it and I kind of witnessed it. I don't think the medical field does a good enough job of guiding people, whether it's athletes, whether it's general posture, or anyone, through the injury. They say, okay, you're injured, we're going to have repair, you go to rehab. But then they kind of take this conservative approach. They kind of treat the body like it's fragile, like it's going to break down. But you have to understand that person is not fragile, and you can't. It's not good to give that person the idea or notion that they're now fragile, because they'll take that to heart and they'll be like, oh, I can't walk upstairs. I can't run because I had a knee surgery. I had back surgery. Like, I can't ever move again. When in reality, that's not the case, because that person who has back surgery, do they need to be able to tie their shoe and get out of bed and sit in the car and play golf because they love to play golf, or they want to walk their grandkids in a carriage? So how do you tell someone, oh, you shouldn't do any of this stuff again and you need to be really careful? We create almost this very scared tactics. And I would love to see the medical field get a little better with this. I know they're providing information and they're saying like, oh, if you do some of this stuff, yes, this could happen. Obviously, if you have certain surgeries or injuries, you need to go see specialists and injury preventionists and certain coaches or trainers that will help you and understand that injury. But that's not what we are. We are resilience. Tissues get stronger. Tissues get bigger. They get thicker. They build more matrices. That's how the body works. So when you're injured, your goal is to return to whatever you want to do. Life, sport, it doesn't matter. You need to build resiliency through the system. And a lot of times we're not. People go through 6 weeks of rehab. And I'm going to use the rehab model in this. Even if you're not in rehab and you might just have some shin splints or some injuries or whatever, or you're just sore from the gym, like, you have to understand your body's building, but it's not a problem. You kind of have to treat your body as this thing is a machine and you have to push it to be better. So that's what, when I go, we treat ourselves too fragile, and we do. It's not benefiting us. And then when we go to do things that we want to do, if we haven't built that system back up, that structure that is weak or not there, it's going to fall apart. And kind of, as you say, we're building, what'd you say? It's kind of slipped my mind. We're building that pattern of relearning in the brain, right? And that fear. We need to basically say through exercise, if you are injured or you're just exercising, you're teaching your body something new every time you pick up a weight, every time you run. I did a run yesterday. Great. The run today resets and it nullifies what I did yesterday because now the brain had a new experience. It learned something new and it says, okay, well, yesterday's really doesn't matter. I knew what it was, but it doesn't matter.
Well, there's a couple things I want to unpack there, but I think the most important thing you said there was just about relearning something. And you might have a bad experience. Say, I use a good example of like going out to the bar and talking to somebody to try to get a date, right? You might get shut down, you might get rejected, and you might have that fear next time of when you go to talk to somebody. You're afraid to be rejected, you're afraid to be hurt, but you have to overcome that, and you have to basically try to learn a new way. Maybe it was your approach, maybe it was something you were wearing. And for the gym, it's maybe you weren't mindful enough of the proper form, maybe you weren't activating the right muscle properly, maybe you weren't in the right positioning, maybe you were using the wrong weight, maybe you're not using the right shoe or something like that, maybe you didn't warm up properly, maybe you didn't sleep well, maybe you didn't eat well. There's a lot of things that can play a role into your newer experience, and you have to be able to be willing to grow and evolve from that specific experience, especially if it's like a movement that is hurting your knees. I hear so many people will never squat again because, oh, it hurts their knees, when they're more than likely to bench in a bad position, hinge in a bad position and run, putting all that impact on their knees and doing more damage, but they won't squat because they don't know what variables they should be adjusting. They should be looking at their mobility. They should be looking at soft tissue work. They should be looking at activation of the proper muscles that are used during a squat. Those are the primary movers. They should be looking at the proper technique to the breathing mechanics for a squat to keep their tension in your core and have your pelvic floor engaged. So you have a platform for your abs to sit on or your core to sit on. So there's so many different ways that people can revisit something that was a problem in the past. But if you keep letting that memory or that fear of experiencing what you experienced before hinder your ability to try something, well, it's just going to constantly hold you back and you're never going to evolve. And now you're going to probably make even more or what's the word I'm looking for? Not adaptations, but the body's going to make, oh man, words escape my brain right now. But basically when you're going to do a primary movement and your body has to work around it, it has to compensate. It has to do like a compensatory movement, and you might activate something and then possibly injure something even further. So I think that's super important. And then another aspect to injury is it really, I mean, I would do just want to say that I think we are kind of talking about a broad spectrum here and talking a little too generally, because when you do have an injury, you're by all means, like you're allowed to feel like you're babying yourself, as long as you're trying to safely push yourself to strengthen a movement pattern again, or even just stand on one leg again, because some people get a surgery or something done, they can't even have any weight bearing on that side. So there's it's back to even a metaphor about mobility. There's no wrong or right position. Just there's the only bad position is the one you can't get out of. So there's no wrong or right to feeling like you're babying yourself or feeling like you're pushing yourself, as long as they're happening in the right manner. And really the proof is in the pudding. So if you're getting results with what you're doing, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
But if you keep spinning your wheels and you feel stuck, or you get into reoccurring patterns of programming and working out so hard for 4 to 6 weeks and then falling off the bandwagon, then it's time to be smarter and correct these patterns, these destructive patterns, or these patterns that are just spinning your wheels and not taking you anywhere. Because I think the biggest piece for pushing yourself is doing so in a way that you can do that day in and day out. You have to be able to keep that consistency with you. So it doesn't mean push yourself as hard as you can on Monday and then coast the rest of the week. And it doesn't mean push yourself and just do the same work you did last week next week. You have to look for little ways to get those little step functions in. And I think a good analogy is this picture where this guy there's 2 ladders, and one guy's climbing up one ladder and the other guy's stuck kind of on the second rung. And because the steps between the ladder are like 3 or 4 feet away from each other, right? So it's kind of harder for him to climb up over that next rung. But the other guy, the ladder, the little steps are, 6 inches to a foot apart. So it's short, it's smaller steps, but it's allowing him to constantly advance. And it's the same thing with your programming. It's the same thing with your effort and the training that you put forth on a weekly basis.
Yeah. And just like the injuries perspective, right? Your body remembers something, and you hit it when you said you go hard on Monday or day one, and then you coast the rest of the week. For people who aren't injured, and you see this a lot, is they go through these intense workouts and they go, oh man, that was hard. That was pretty tough. And mentally, they don't want to do it again. And of course, there's guaranteed you've had workouts that you don't want to repeat. I have them. I've done programs with plenty of them. I'll cringe now when I pull up a program
10,
and I'm like,
30 on, 30 off.
Yeah, 30 on mass or whatever. I'm like, this is going to be, or mass made civ. Like, I know these programs are going to be tough and this is going to suck. And you don't want to do it day over day. But here's the thing. This is where you have to learn to push yourself, because you can't just dial it back a little bit because your previous memory of that workout was already hard. You have to go understand this is going to be hard. I have to go with that or more. This is going to be even more challenging, but it's going to do something for me. And I think that is where people need to get pushed. And the hardest part for this is a lot of people can't push it on their own. So if they can't push it on their own, go find a coach or a trainer, or find a avenue that someone will push you mentally, because it's very much mental to go do something. That is where a lot of people are going to need some coaching, whether it's 1 day a week, 2 days, but that is where you're going to get a lot of benefit from if you see something like that, or someone's going to hold you accountable and make sure you're keeping that intensity day in, day out, because that's what's going to get you towards your goals. If you do not work hard enough, you go hard on 1 day, and then every day after on that program, from the first week you started that program, it's going to be less because you know how it felt the first time and you don't want to go there because it's uncomfortable. It's tiring,
Yeah. It's basically, something to ask yourself of, like, how willing are you, how willing do you feel to train to this week? And I'm sure that's terrible grammar, and my English teacher would slap me in the face, but basically what I'm getting at is your excitement to train and your willingness to execute the program. Because you can write the baddest motherfucking program out there, but if you aren't going to do it, what's the fucking point? And that's the thing, is like, the best program is the one that you keep doing and it keeps delivering you results over and over again. And that's so hard to do. Like, the best coaches have coaches. I'll be the first to admit, because I don't want my bias to override me writing something in that I hate to do. And likewise, I don't want to write something in that I feel would be too easy for me to do. So I remove that bias and I trust someone else to overlook my programming. And then I continue to evolve in my programming so I can continue to be the best coach and put my emphasis on training an individual. So you got to ask yourself, really, how important is your goal? Why aren't you reaching it? What have you done to try to reach it? And then look yourself in the mirror and just say, what more could I be doing? What more could I be doing in a healthy manner to keep my enjoyment in the work, keep my effort delivered into the work, and keep me advancing and living my best life? And lastly, I do just want to say that we want to just let everyone know that we extend ourselves for a free consultation call to any of our listeners, whether you're stuck, whether you've been training for years, or whether you're just getting going. We'd love to help at least steer you in the right direction and get you going with an action plan for free. So check this out. It's calendly.com/thinkfitnesslife, all one word. That's calendly.com/thinkfitnesslife. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your week.
If you're ready to make steps towards improving your health or increasing your performance, book a free 30-minute call today by visiting thinkfitnesslife.com.